Good afternoon. My name is Kelsey Olson, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Deputy Secretary of the Kansas Department of Agriculture. Welcome to the 5th Annual Kansas Summit on Agricultural Growth. You are gathering today to discuss how we can grow the agriculture industry in our state. As you know, this event has traditionally been held virtual in person, and we've been able to bring all the sectors of agriculture together in one location with the common goal of growing Kansas agriculture. Obviously, we are not all in one location this year and certainly spread out throughout the days, but we are still focused on that one goal. We are excited about this opportunity of a virtual summit and bringing together the experience that we all enjoy, typically in person. I'm confident that we'll be able to find a way to continue to work together in this virtual environment and to outline our specific action items that we can move forward together as an industry. In these challenging times, the role of agriculture plays as Kansas's largest industry and economic driver is even more critical. We continue to be focused on our economic growth for the state, which we know is dependent on the growth of the agriculture sector. Strategic industry growth requires communication, coordination, and collaboration. I thank you for taking time today to discuss the poultry industry and how we can grow together in this area. I'm confident that through this effort and your participation, we'll have a great sector. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie Weefold with our Ag Marketing.
Great, and good afternoon, and thank you to everyone who is choosing to join us today for our 12th sector session update. Today we're going to be focusing on poultry. Like Deputy Secretary Olson said, I'm Carrie Weefold, and I'm the Director of Agriculture Marketing here at the Department of Agriculture. And our mission is to support our farmers, ranchers, and agribusinesses across the state, as well as the consumers and the customers that they serve. Today we will be taking a deeper dive and looking into the poultry industry. And when we look at poultry as a state, we have a $75 million economic output from this sector alone. When we looked at induced and indirect effects, that increases to about $126 million economic impact for our state. Today, you're in for a real treat because we have an all-star lineup to help advocate and educate those of you who are on the call, our session today, about the poultry industry. As we worked through our 2019 poultry ag sector room, it was evident that there was interest in the Department of Agriculture continuing to develop and set up opportunities for Kansans to learn more about the poultry industry. And then the second priority was to continue to push for sound regulation of this sector within the state of Kansas. So today, on our deeper dive, looking at the poultry industry, the first part of our session will really focus on looking at the subsectors of poultry. That will be looking at our laying units in the state of Kansas, also looking at the broiler industry, and then looking at the turkey industry. Then we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to learn about benefits to our Kansas farmers, ranchers, and communities for embracing the poultry sector. Between each session, we'll have opportunities for question and answers. So I hope that as you listen and learn, you might be willing to jot down some questions and then ask them via the chat. If you are a returning member of the Agro Sector series, you'll notice that we do have some ground rules. If you're new, please note some rules that we ask all of our participants to follow today. Just so you know, all of our participants are on mute and will remain on mute through the duration of the afternoon together. If you have a question, and we certainly hope you do, you can send that in via the question and answer box that's located at the bottom of your screen. My colleague Robin Bloom and I are working together this afternoon on the poultry sector, and Robin will be receiving those questions and then directing them accordingly to our panelists. When you do send a question in, just for our benefit, we ask that you perhaps provide your first name, where you're calling from, or where you're emailing your question in from, and then also what that question is. And we'll do our best to make sure we have our panelists answer that question on your behalf. At any time, we may have technical difficulties, or we may have internet and technical difficulties. So just stay with us and hold tight if we do have transition issues or problems with any technology. So again, we're just so delighted to have you with us this afternoon. we're going to learn a little bit about the poultry sector, and I hope that you all will have an open mind and open ears to listen and learn, and hopefully learn something new about the value of this industry to our state and also to our farmers and ranchers. So today, as we get started, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you Brian Ballard, who is the General Manager of Cal-Maine Foods here in Central Kansas. And Brian's going to share a little bit with you about the egg-laying industry, and then some fun facts about Cal-Maine and their commitment to sustainability. So please help me welcome Brian Ballard from Cal-Maine Foods. Brian.
Good afternoon, Carrie. I hope you can hear me okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Brian.
Just making sure. I'm going to try to share my screen and see if this will work.
Great. Yep, looks good, Brian.
All right, I'm having a little bit of technical difficulties on my end. I'm not able to see any video that y'all are presenting, so hopefully y'all can follow along with me. But I am going to talk a little bit about Cal-Maine, a little bit about the poultry industry and sustainability. I think it's important to recognize what is sustainability, and from Cal-Maine's vantage point, sustainability means the capacity to endure, so to last. And we've kind of categorized those things down into 5 areas: the environment, community involvement, food, because we are producing food, animal welfare, and people in this workplace. And kind of to start this off, I put this slide up here that y'all are looking at with me. And it kind of gives us a brief model of how everything starts for us. And everything starts for our industry with production of food crops. So we have corn and soybean meal that is produced through our feed mills, then goes to our primary breeders, and that goes to a hatchery, and that goes to a secondary breeder, and then to another hatchery where we raise commercial flocks for the pullet houses, and then into our layer houses. And out of each one of those, we have to have inputs, and that's again primarily feed. And our outputs from that point is primarily fertilizer at that point. And then once we get to the layer house, then we have fertilizer that's continued to be output, and also the food product that we're producing, which is eggs. And from there, we go into our processing plants, where we are processing and packaging and getting consumer products ready for sales and distribution. And that goes into several different product types. So we have egg cartons, we have corrugated boxes that we use, RPCs, which are reusable plastic containers. And all those affect our environment. So a little bit about the environment that we're going to talk about. And I'll throw in just some fun facts along the way. Since 2016, Cal-Maine has been converting several of its facilities from LED to LED lighting, and we estimate that we've reduced our consumption of energy by 10% over the last 4 years. We're going to continue to work on those type of reductions in the future. Some other fun facts: through feed management advancements in our feeding program, we've reduced the phosphorus that's generated by operations by 50%, or 2.7 million pounds in the last 3 years. So that's huge advancements that we've made strides in the environment. Some other fun facts in environment. We, like I said, we do produce a byproduct of manure, and most of that is typically sold to local farmers in our area and used for fertilizer. And the other byproduct that we generate is through wastewater in our processing plants, and we utilize that wastewater on crops in our area to then be utilized for forage crops that's fed back to livestock. So all of this is essentially a zero waste at this point. Another fun fact, since 1960, we have worked in ways of innovating water consumption, and it takes 32% less water today to produce a dozen eggs than it did in 1960. So we've done that through best management practices and watering infrastructure over the years. So we've really become good stewards of our environment by some of these practices. Another issue that we've taken on is opportunities with things going to the landfill. So by EPA's estimation, 30.1 million tons of corrugated cardboard is generated each year. And we've taken an initiative to go towards a more sustainable path of using reusable plastic containers, which are recycled and reused over and over again. And we're using less cardboard as an industry. The cardboard that we do use is purchased through the Sustainable Forest Initiative, which means it's third-party certified to make sure that it has been sustainable production. Just another fun fact about cardboard, it's the second largest item in the landfills today by volume, so anything we can do to reduce that ultimately has less waste going to the landfill. Another part of our sustainability plan is through community involvement, and Cal-Maine operates about 49 facilities across the U.S., and through that, we've donated 259,944 dozens last year, which is enough to feed 1.6 million people. And we've also donated over $500,000 to local charities in our area. So we really believe in being strong community leaders and helping, whether it's through fire departments, whether that's through just food banks in our area, but just being strong community involvements, whether that's your local baseball team, softball team, or anything that your kids are up to, we're going to be trying to support that any way we can. We also, again, we are a food producer, so we want to make sure that we produce a high quality food with food safety in mind. All of our facilities are SQF Level 3 certified, which is a safe quality food, or a global food safety initiative to produce at a high level. Our facilities all are USDA inspected, and we also have our own quality control personnel on site to make sure our processing plants are meeting all the various state regulations, customer regulations, and performing everything at a high level. So we want to make sure that we are producing a safe, quality food every single day that we're in operation. All of our operations are also third-party audited, and for the last 5 years running, the facility here in Chase has scored 100% on all audits that we've done. So we take it seriously. We want to have good ownership in these programs. Again, the objective is we're producing a food product that each of our families are going to eat, and we want to treat it that way. Moving into animal welfare. Animal welfare is one of the most important things that we deal with because it affects our livelihood. Without us taking care of the bird in our case, then they can't take care of us by producing a high quality egg. So we want to make sure we maintain proper environment through animal housing with the ventilation, feed, water, and the hens being able to get everything they need to produce that egg for us. Each of our facilities is also third-party audited from animal humane standpoints. We are United Egg Producer certified. The American, excuse me, my mind went blank. Humane Farm Animal Care certified, American Humane certified, as well as we have an organic facility here in Kansas that is also certified through Oregon Till Certification, which is a third-party organization to certify the organic standards that we meet. Just a little bit more about the animal welfare. Cal-Maine does not use any animal or artificial hormones in its productions. Matter of fact, they've been banned in the United States since 1950s. You see that a lot in different advertisings about animal hormones, but it's not used in egg production and it hasn't been for 70 years. A little bit about our people and the workforce. At Chase, we currently employ about 200 employees. Across our company, we have more than 3,600 employees. And each of our employees are trained on safety because our one of our main priorities is to keep our employees safe while they are at work, and we want to make sure they go home in the same shape that they came in. Maybe a little bit tired, but that's okay. We've also introduced in the last year a biodefense system that has the ability to reduce microbial challenges such as viruses, which is really come in handy with the COVID, and also bacteria and mold growth in our processing plants. So it gives our employees a little security knowing that we have some biosecurity defense or biodefense in our processing plants to just kill any viruses or molds that may be in these facilities. Just a little bit more about our safety of our employees. Our industry standards show that 5.23% of a recordable injury rate, while Cal-Maine's safety rate was 1.86. And on lost time incidences, 4.8 on the industry standard and 1.29% on Cal-Maine's rate. So we have good programs in place that we train our employees to understand our procedures, and we execute at a high level. Now, 1.29% is not a great number, but it's better than the industry average, and it's something that we can continue to improve on. But we can just really want to make sure that we take care of all of our employees on a daily basis. Are there any questions that I can answer? I know I went through that pretty fast, but I was trying to make sure I hit all my bullet points.
Perfect. Do we have any questions come in, Robin?
Can you hear me, Carrie?
I can't hear you.
Okay. We did have one question, if you can hear me. How many eggs does your Kansas facilities package and provide into markets annually?
Okay, so oh, go ahead. Did you hear that, Brian? I
Yes,
might have
ma'am.
you repeat the question for those who weren't able to hear it.
Okay, the question was, how many dozens does our Kansas operation produce on an annual basis? In round numbers, we produce around 100,000 dozen 7 days a week.
Perfect. That's a lot of eggs. How about that?
It is a lot of eggs.
Very good. So I'm going to have Brian go back on mute, and we're going to continue going. And if you have any questions or comments or thoughts, you know, we can follow up with Brian after we transition out of this session. One thing I will note, 100,000 dozen every 7 days. That's a lot of eggs to fulfill the supply on consumers, not only across the Midwest, but across the country. So thank you, Brian, for bringing those comments about Cal-Maine. I do want to note, I really appreciate the commitment to community. I know during the onset of COVID, Cal-Maine was very generous with donating some N95 masks there to the Rice County District Hospital and supporting the community in many ways. So thank you, Brian, for sharing a little bit about the egg laying entity that is in Kansas that is laying and processing 100,000 dozen eggs every 7 days. So I challenge you to do the math on that. That might be a math question for your kids to figure out how many actual eggs that is. Moving on, I think it's important to know that every one of our panelists today have some touch point with Kansas. They might not live in Kansas right now, but they have a history or they were formally educated in the state of Kansas. And we're going to move on to look at the broiler industry. And it's very fair to note that we do not have a robust broiler industry in Kansas, but I think it's very important to note that we have a lot of feed ingredients that go into the broiler industry of our surrounding states of Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri. And we have a lot of poultry litter that comes back into our state from the broiler industry, providing nourishment for our soil that we're going to learn a little bit more here later in the afternoon together. So for now, it's my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Dr. Sarah Steinlage with Simmons. Foods. And Sarah is the Senior Director of Veterinary Services for Simmons. And she's a Kansas girl who's transitioned through the College of Veterinary Medicine at K-State and has had a very positive profession in the poultry industry. So thank you, Sarah. She's going to introduce her colleague, Whitney, and we're going to learn a little bit about the Simmons model and animal welfare from the Simmons benchmark as well. So Sarah, thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Carrie. We appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today. Let me attempt to share my screen and get the technology working here. Do that, and then we'll do some introductions. Can you hear us again?
Yes.
And see us? Okay, very good. Well, appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today. As Carrie said, I am a Kansas girl, grew up and actually went to college with Carrie. So I grew up in McPherson, Kansas, and have strong ties to Kansas community, with my grandparents still being up around Washington, Kansas. And I get the question a lot of how did I end up in the poultry industry having grown up in Kansas? Because as you said, we don't necessarily have a robust poultry industry in Kansas, but through, you know, I always knew I was going to go to vet school. I'd always planned on being a veterinarian. It morphed a couple different times from a small animal vet to an equine vet, and decided I really wanted to reconnect with my agricultural roots, but I didn't necessarily want to get beat up by cattle. And so came across through the career fair at Kansas State, then undergrad, through the Midwest Poultry Consortium. And that really linked me into poultry. Went to University of Wisconsin, very much blinded to anything around poultry. Luckily, I had a colleague that was really connected to the table egg industry that gave me tutorials and helped me understand what this poultry industry was really about. So I did undergrad and vet school at Kansas State. That took me to University of Georgia for my master's degree in poultry medicine. And then from there, I came back to the state of Arkansas. It was really the closest place that I could get back to my roots and back to my family in Kansas, but be still involved in the poultry industry. So it's been a really great career. I spent 17 years with Elanco Animal Health and have now had almost a year here with Simmons Foods as their production veterinarian. So what we want to do today is share with you a little bit about the Simmons family and the Simmons company, and then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Whitney Haley, and she is our Director of Animal Welfare. She's been with Simmons Foods for 19 years. Grew up on a family farm, very committed to agriculture, and has been a great asset to the Simmons family and Simmons Foods, and really directing our animal welfare programs. So a little bit about who Simmons is. We are a family-owned company. We are being led currently by our third generation of the Simmons family. You'll see Todd there on the left and Mark, his father. So Todd is our CEO and Mark is active as chairman of the board, and they're both very, very active in the community in and around Arkansas and where our processing and our plant facilities are. By numbers, we're about the 14th largest poultry integrator in North America. As I said, we're family owned. We were started in 1949. We are a diversified business, and through all the craziness of COVID, that's been a big asset for us. So our poultry is our biggest and our primary focus, but we also have a pet food industry, and those of you around Kansas are probably familiar with our plant in Emporia, as well as an animal nutrition business. So the animal nutrition business has been a really nice segue between our poultry and our pet food, and has helped both of our businesses through, especially through these times. We've primarily had a focus on food service and private label. From a food service standpoint for us, it's a lot of quick service restaurants, Taco Bell, Chick-fil-A, to name a couple of them, along with the KFC, Pizza Hut, that family of brands. But we do a lot of casual dining, so what we call center of the plate. So many of the restaurants, casual dining restaurants, when you go in, that chicken breast, those types of things would be products that would come from our facility. A lot of the wing restaurants, we supply a lot of those. But you're starting to see some of our labels come into retail, and that's only been accelerated through the recent COVID activities. So we'll see some branding. It's kind of fun to walk in the store and see your own brand. For us, it's the Sager Creek brand that we're starting to see in the retail space. We do about $1.4 billion annually, and that number is steadily climbing as we continue to grow both our poultry, our pet food, and our animal nutrition business. As it stakes up around some of our other companies that are involved in poultry, and specifically chickens, you'll see Tyson, Pilgrim, Sanderson, Purdue, some of maybe the more common names that you would be used to seeing in the grocery store. But as you can see, we've got some big giants in there, and then you've got kind of your medium-sized family-owned companies that are in the center there. We have over 7,000 employees across all three of our divisions, and we are a fully integrated poultry industry. And Whitney will talk a little bit about what that means, but basically we have all the way from breeding stock into our broilers that we grow. We have the hatcheries, we have the feed mills, as well as the sales and marketing and processing. And this is where we're located from our poultry perspective. We're primarily in this corner where Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Missouri meet. We have our grow out all in those three states. We have processing in the states of Arkansas and Missouri. And we have one feed mill over in Oklahoma. And we do, as I said earlier, have a connection to Kansas through our pet food division. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Whitney to share with you about our commitment to animal welfare and what that means to us.
Hi, everybody. I'm Whitney Haley. I'm going to talk to you a little about animal welfare today. So the one thing we want everybody to understand is that we are invested in the future of food. So less than 2% of the American workforce is involved in agriculture. And that means those people have farms with cattle, they have farms with chickens, anything. That's just the people that are working in agriculture all across. So that's a very low number when you start thinking about it. More than 29,000 of our family farmers throughout the United States have contracts with poultry companies, and over 300 independent family farmers have contracts with Simmons Foods. So that includes pullets, breeders, and broilers. Those are our family farmers. And then that more than 20% of all farmers right now are beginning farmers, meaning that they've been in the industry for less than 10 years. So that's another big number that I like for people to kind of think about the up and coming future of farming. Is it? I'll do it that way. Okay, so we understand the burden of proof and the responsibility that our customers, as well as our growers, want to know that we're taking care of birds as well as they are. So some of the things that we've done to better the animal welfare program at Simmons Foods is that we have the Animal Welfare Committee, which includes people in live production, the processing plants. We also include people from sales and marketing as well. We're looking at talking to people that we do business with and bringing them on board and maybe getting some ideas from them. We have a full-time animal welfare position, as well as industry collaboration. So a website you can go to is Chicken Check In. It's chickencheck.in, and that's through the National Chicken Council, and they have some really cool videos and talk to growers and let you kind of go inside videos of poultry houses, watching birds being raised in houses, processing plants, transportation, all of that. So we respect the chicken. As I said, animal welfare is nothing new. So Simmons has been around since 1949. So we've been taking care of chickens and doing things regarding animal welfare since that date. Things have just evolved. So in 1949, we were worried about making sure that the birds were taken care of and if they had proper temperatures or were kept away from predators. And now we do lots of other things that we add into it and that we're checking and constantly monitoring on these farms and throughout production as well. So we want to say that we care for their needs and the chicken provides for our nutrition. So if you think about it, growers are not going to get paid unless that they're taking care of those birds and sending the most healthy birds to the plant. We want to take care of it and make sure everything's done. So in the end, those birds that are healthy are going to provide for the nutrition for the people in the U.S. as well as anything we may export. So what does right look like? So Sarah kind of mentioned we would talk about our integration. So here you can see we have corn, soybeans, and we roll into our feed mill. We have pullet farms. We purchase pullets from breeder companies. We raise those pullets up to breeders that lay our broiler breeder eggs that are hatched in our hatcheries. We have 3 of them. They then go to grow out house where they become a market ready broiler. go into our processing facility where they're processed, and then they go on to further processing where they might be breaded, par fried, deboned, cut up, whatever we need for our customers. They're distributed, and then they end up on the plates at your restaurants or maybe even fast food. So our first thing that we want to discuss too is that we are committed to the 5 freedoms. So we're committed to freedom from hunger and thirst, freedom from discomfort, freedom from pain, injury, or disease. We want the birds to have freedom to express normal behavior, and we want them to have freedom from fear and distress. So at the feed mill, you are what you eat. So at our feed mills, we have 2 feed mills, one in Decatur, Arkansas, and one in Fairland, Oklahoma. At these feed mills, we're doing constant monitoring and testing. We look at feed ingredients. We also do everything from monitor pellet quality. You may think that sounds crazy, but it's really important that we're keeping pellets at consistent quality for those birds throughout their life. So we don't want them getting a mash product, and then we don't want them getting a powdery feed product, and then we don't want them getting pellets the next time. So we do a pellet testing where it makes sure that those pellets are holding up. It kind of simulates what it's like going through an auger of going through the feed mill, through the auger of a truck, down the feed line, and how we predict it should end up in the feed pan. So hatchery, this is our nurseries for our baby chicks. We want to make sure everything is perfect there for those babies to get the best start in life when they go to the farm. So ideal conditions. So we have QA staff at all 3 hatcheries. We have a hatchery in Jane, Missouri, a hatchery in Decatur, Arkansas, and a hatchery in Siloam Springs, Arkansas. So we have QA techs that are constantly monitoring, checking for bacteria throughout the hatchery. We're checking chick boxes that chicks go out in. We're checking the hatchers that they're actually sitting in, the setters. We're monitoring egg room conditions. We're monitoring temperatures. One thing that's kind of cool about the hatchery is hatchery is the only location at Simmons Foods that has a person at the facility 24/7, 365 days a year. So even on Christmas Day, we have somebody there because we always have eggs in the machines ready to roll out with chicks. So if anything bad happens, that's a lot of production that could be lost. So someone is there regardless to make sure that if there's an alarm that sounds, they're there to monitor it and take care of the alarm system. So here's a picture of just how we get chicks into a barn. Those are the chick boxes. Again, we monitor those and make sure everything's clean. All of our chick boxes are sanitized after chick delivery. So like those boxes would come back in and be sanitized at the hatchery before more chicks were placed in them. On the farm, we want our birds to eat, drink, and socialize. So a lot of things go into it. We want to make sure our lighting programs are good. We want to make sure that feed, those pellets, everything is getting those birds are getting everything we need. We have Dr. Steinlage here that's helping to write our health plans for our birds. She works with our service techs and our broiler and breeder managers, as well as our breeder service techs. We also have a nutritionist who consults and takes care of us and makes sure that we've got anything we need diet-wise. And if there's an issue with the birds that we think could be related to diet, he is in the loop and we're getting things fixed. So our housing on our broilers is a new solid sidewall housing program. So we're able to monitor our temperatures. We're able to keep our temperatures from one end of the house to the other. We have a 66 by 600 house, and we can keep those temperatures within 3 to 4 degrees on the coldest day of the year to the warmest day of the year throughout the house. So that's the beauty of those houses. We're able to monitor our ammonia and ventilation programs as well in those houses and make sure that those birds are just in a perfect atmosphere while they're being raised. So a little bit about our broiler side. So I mentioned earlier we had over 300 growers, so this strictly relates to broilers. We have contracts with 240 broiler growers for a total of 1,400 houses. We currently have 24 company managed farms for a total of 201 houses. We place 4,380,000 broiler chicks per week. We currently harvest 4,273,000 broilers per week, and our bird sizes are 4.5 pounds at our Southwest City, Missouri processing location and 8.5 pounds at our Gentry, Arkansas processing location. Here's a picture of what a modern day poultry farm looks like. So this is what our new houses are being built. This is how they look. This is a 66 by 600 house. When I talked about ventilation earlier, this is what those houses look like on the inside. So you've got the solid sides, you've got your cool cells, which this time of year we're running those, and we've got, you know, a nice cool breeze blowing down through those birds. It'll be 65 degrees in there. It's somewhere you would much rather be is to be outside. So you are ready to get in those houses as soon as you get out of your truck, especially when it's 100 degrees outside. Here is kind of a density idea of what birds look like when they're placed. This is the day of placement. You can see we have some feed trays as well as supplemental feeders. Next to those trays, we want to make sure that those chicks have everything they need to get the good start. So we want them all having as much feed as possible and able to access it. And then you can see the water lines, the nipple drinkers, where they drink from, and they go right to water. And we like to see them, they're spread out, they're comfortable. So we talked a little bit about bedding this session. So you can see here's what some clean litter or bedding looks like in a broiler house. We use a rice hull and wood chip blend shavings mix for our bedding. And then we'll talk a little about transportation. So we want to say, or we want you to understand that a safe ride is healthy transport for our chickens. So our transportation vehicles, egg trucks, trucks that are, or trailers that are delivering pullets, those are climate controlled. So when those pullets come to the farm, they're coming on a climate controlled vehicle. Those birds shouldn't be getting too cold. They should not be getting too hot. All of those trailers have generators on them. So if a generator, electricity fails, a generator should back up, as well as alarms will sound. Same way with the eggs coming to our hatchery, they're on the same type of trailers. So trailers that are transporting broilers that are on the farm to the plant are a little different. They're module sized trailers, which have wire, they're type of a wire type cage that have doors on them. So those birds, when they're getting moved from the farm to the live haul shed at processing plant, we're making sure that they're as comfortable as possible. So if it's hot outside like it is today, if it's 80 degrees or above, we're going to be misting those birds off on the farm. So they've got some cooling process in the plant or on the highway as they're coming into the plants. Just those type of things. If it's cold outside, we've got headboards and sideboards for wintertime production, where we can kind of put those into the modules and keep those birds from getting too cold when it's 10 degrees outside. So we've got plans in place to help protect our birds all the way around. So processing plant, we always say the best way is the right way. So all of our processing plants have a live haul shed where those trailers will come into. We have misters that are there to keep the birds from getting too hot. We have fans to keep ventilation pushing through. We use those fans even in the winter time. You may not think you need them, but you do have to give them a shot of air to keep that ventilation moving through those live haul sheds. We'll then take those trailers to the back dock where we will unload those modules. We have people that are trained to properly unload them. We don't just dump them, on top of each other. It's kind of on a tilt, so they come out and slide out slowly. All of our shacklers are trained. We have pedal brakes to kind of take care of any issues that may come about if like a worker gets fatigued or tired. We can slow down those lines if we need to. And we do employee rotations throughout the shackling process. We also have people who are monitoring our stun lines as well as our knife cut line. And then we have a backup knife cut person who's making sure that all birds have been cut by a blade before they go through the processing plant. So these things are very big, important things that we want to make sure is done at the plant. So it's always the right way. So I've talked about some of the things we've done. Checks and balances is big. So we have regular trainings at Simmons Food. So anybody who handles a live bird at Simmons Food is trained 2 times a year in animal welfare. That's at the hatcheries, processing plants. We train our growers once a year. We have internal audits. So at the plants, each line is being audited twice a shift. So if there's 3 lines, they're getting audited, 6 times that shift. So we also do third-party audits. We do 2 third-party audits a year. We usually have them in the spring and in the fall. These are required. All of our customers require 1 animal welfare audit, but we go ahead and do 2 just to make sure that we're getting things done. And we always have within a 6-month time frame the most recent audit. These are things that we feel is very important. So with that being said, I think that is it. Does anybody have any questions?
Perfect. I don't see any questions in the queue right now for Dr. Steinlage or Whitney, but that was just excellent information that you shared about the broiler industry and about Simmons. So if any of our participants today do have questions, certainly shoot them in through the question and answer, and we can have Dr. Steinlage and Whitney answer those here in the next part of our session. I think it's really important to note that while we don't have a robust broiler industry in Kansas, we have a lot of business that happens around our state, and that we also have a lot of co-products and byproducts that are in and out of our state from the broiler industry. So we welcome Simmons. Simmons also, via Jason Gotzi, was active with our pet food industry sector early on, if Simmons rings a bell for any of you who joined pet food. So we're grateful for the partnership that we have. And I just want to congratulate Dr. Steinlage and Whitney on their new processing facility in Decatur, because it's a state-of-the-art processing facility and it's quite impressive. Simmons was gracious enough to host us, our Animal Health Division, and then the Department of Commerce earlier this year to get a sneak peek at what it looks like processing in a brand new facility. So congratulations, and thank you for those comments that you brought on behalf of Simmons and your colleagues and the broiler industry. We're going to transition on now and take a quick snapshot look at the turkey industry in Kansas. Some of you may know we have a turkey industry. Some of you know we may not have a turkey industry, depending on your knowledge base of Kansas agriculture. But it is my pleasure today to have Dr. Cable Robbins join us from Butterball. And Dr. Robbins, similar to Sarah, is a K-State College of Veterinary Medicine graduate and worked his way into the poultry industry. So Dr. Robbins is going to just provide some information about the turkey industry, and then we'll transition on to our friends from Cargill out of Wichita. So first, Dr. Robbins, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks a lot, Carrie.
Yeah.
And good to be here with you all this afternoon. Just wanted to start out very briefly by letting you guys know my history. Carrie certainly gave a good introduction there. But I grew up in Northeast Kansas, was raised with beef cattle in the town of Oskaloosa, was also involved in 4-H and some exhibition poultry and projects and things, but never really seriously considered a career in the poultry industry. Similar to Dr. Steinlage, always knew I wanted to go to vet school, worked in a mixed animal clinic, and then went to undergrad in animal science at K-State. Went on to veterinary school, assuming that I would be doing some type of private veterinary practice within the state of Kansas. Honestly, kind of got towards the end of vet school and started realizing that maybe that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. So, later than Dr. Steinlage's realization that there were some other options out there, I quite honestly stumbled upon poultry. So I found an opportunity to go to North Carolina State and spend a couple weeks kind of shadowing and learning about the poultry industry and what a veterinarian would do within that industry. And that just was a great eye-opening experience for me, something I had no experience with the commercial industry before that time, and made the decision that that was really something that I wanted to pursue further. So after some good thought, applied to the master's program at North Carolina State at their veterinary school, which I attended after graduating from Kansas State. There's where I did all of my training in poultry and really got exposed to all of the different areas of the poultry industry, and grew to love turkeys more than anything. So with my experiences there, had the desire to move back towards Kansas, at least as close as I could be. So that brought me here to Northwest Arkansas, where I'm the veterinarian for Butterball here. And so, it's been a great opportunity. Been here almost 10 years now, and really enjoy what the poultry industry has offered for me. Definitely close enough to Kansas here to still make it back and have all of those opportunities as well. So when we look at the turkey industry and what that means here at Butterball, we're headquartered in Garner, North Carolina, and have a large presence in the state of North Carolina as well, but certainly active here in the Midwest with a large number of farms in Arkansas and Missouri, but also we have farms in Southeast Kansas. So the Kansas and Missouri divisions for us are responsible for growing tom or male turkeys, which will grow to a weight of approximately 50 pounds. So quite a large bird. That's going to take about 5 months for that bird to reach that weight and be ready for processing. And they're going to go to our facility in Carthage, Missouri. The other Kansas connection there is that all of the feed for those turkeys in Missouri and Kansas comes from our feed mill in Southeast Kansas. And that mill produces about 250,000 tons of feed per year for our turkeys in that area, with the largest amount of the inputs being corn and a large amount of that coming from Kansas farms. So we certainly follow that process all the way through, starting with the corn in Kansas. Our about 10% of the birds or so that are processed in our Missouri operation are grown in the state of Kansas. So we certainly have a presence there as well, even if it's something that a lot of people aren't aware of, that turkeys to some extent are present in the state. And so here in Arkansas, where I'm located, is where we raise all of our whole or holiday turkeys. So everything for Thanksgiving and Christmas is raised here in the state of Arkansas. And about 40% of all of the birds consumed at the holidays are from Butterball. So we certainly are very active at that time of year, but our Kansas birds end up in products most likely to be ground turkey or turkey burgers, but also further processed products like sausages and bacons and deli meats as well. So that's kind of just a general overview of how I found the poultry industry. I think it's a great opportunity for many in Kansas to learn more about. I think it was very good that I had the beginnings through 4-H of at least some exposure, but certainly no exposure is required. And the industry is great about taking college students as interns or externs in order to give them the experience to learn more about the industry and attract new faces and new blood to be able to continue on serving the industry and serving agriculture as a whole. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Carrie, and certainly happy to do any further questions that may come along later this afternoon.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Robbins. I don't know about you, but maybe you learned something new about the Butterball, the turkey, the holiday, or end products that you might find in the consumer retail counters that might originate back from Kansas. Moving on with the turkey industry, we have a unique situation with Cargill, based in Wichita, Kansas, of having a pretty heavy touch point within the turkey industry as well. And while we don't have any grower houses in Kansas, I think it's important to know that Kansans go to work every day in Wichita supporting our domestic turkey industry. So it's my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, John Neiman, who serves as president of Protein Ingredients and International for Cargill. And the interesting piece to also note is that within agriculture, we're all connected. And John tells me that his mom was one of Cable's high school teachers. So I'll have to have John further explain that. So help me welcome John Neiman, who's going to share a little bit about Cargill's investment into the turkey industry. John.
Yes, thank you. It looked like my video locked up, so I'll just go with audio to make sure the presentation comes through to everyone. Great to be with you this afternoon. And again, appreciate the opportunity to share with you maybe a unique perspective that people don't often think about Cargill when it comes to our Kansas ties as it relates to the turkey business. But also, certainly as you could hear in different people's presentations, we all have a lot of things in common. I spent 8 years with Elanco Animal Health before the 19 years that I've been with Cargill. And I had an opportunity to work in our turkey business and our chicken business with Elanco. And at the time that I did that, I never knew where that might lead to. And later in my career with Cargill, I ran our turkey and cooked meats business many years later. So you never know where your paths might take you. When it also, I find out that through all of this process that yes, one of my mom's former high school students is now the veterinarian at Butterball. And so I think it's great just to see strong Kansas agriculture ties. And I think what's important is that when you're building your network of people in Kansas agriculture, it can lead to a very diverse career, and it leads to many opportunities. And so what I'd like to do is share a brief video. We actually put this together before COVID-19, but it has a lot to do with change, and we made a lot of changes to our business and our protein business over the last couple of years, and made a major investment in Wichita, Kansas. And as a part of that, it was really about bringing the best of our protein businesses all together in one location. So I'm going to jump to that video, and we'll pull that up. It's just about a minute long. The visual may be a little rocky, but the audio should be good. Change. It's the constant, ever-shifting variable every business must contend with. For Cargill Protein, change is an invitation to innovate new products, experiment with new flavors, find new insights, and create new value. To protect what matters, to work smarter and maximize value, to sift through complexity to find new opportunities. Change requires a steadfast purpose. At Cargill Protein, our purpose has never been more clear. It inspires us to fuel the lives of our consumers, to serve in our communities, and to deliver superior value for our customers. Backed with an extensive North American network and a full house of capabilities designed to drive greater value, purpose pushes us to never settle for the status quo, to always strive to create a better future. That's Cargill Protein. That's protein with purpose. All right. So as you think about protein with purpose, we really ask our employees to think about it from the context of each individual job matters in terms of serving a wholesome, safe, and sustainable product. And you heard from several of the presenters that when we think about agriculture and we think about the food system, we need to think about what is it that the consumer wants. And so for a few minutes today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the consumer back approach as we talk about turkey, because you've heard about in poultry production about sustainability and smart practices around animal welfare, us doing the right things right and doing the best things the right way. And then also making sure that we're taking care of not only our agricultural producers and partners, but we're taking care of the animals that we produce. On this side of it, as you relate to Cargill and our ties to the turkey business, our world headquarters for protein are based in Wichita, Kansas. And when we think about what we do and what we operate on, we really want to link our 28,000 employees of Cargill Protein together around putting people first, being customer focused, and also making sure that we're being performance driven. And that's not just for our own business, but also for the customers that we serve. So we're very, very much Kansas proud. I grew up in Northeast Kansas, went to Kansas State and graduated in ag business, and have had the opportunity to live in several places and moved away from Kansas a couple of times and moved back, and very glad to be here. Our Cargill Protein North America headquarters is about 1,000 employees. Obviously, that building is not very full now. About 10% of our employees are operating in that building, and it'll probably stay that way for a while. And those are some of the essential jobs that are tied to our systems there. But like me and many others, we're working virtually, but we are working in our plants and bringing people in through extensive screening and testing on a daily basis, because we understand the responsibility of the value chain that we have to produce for people. When we talk about our talent that is in Wichita, it's marketing people, insights, which is really about consumer data, our R&D. We have a pilot plant where we do a lot of our testing and sampling for customers, and it's tied to all of our 39 plants we have around the U.S. and Canada. But we do recruit people from the state, but also outside. We believe it's important that we have a great presence in Wichita. Part of our decision to be here and stay here was we wanted partnership with the city and with the state. Kansas Department of Agriculture was phenomenal in this process, because we said for us to grow agriculture in Kansas, we need to recruit people and businesses from outside of Kansas here and make it an attractive place to live, attractive place to raise your family, and also for businesses to thrive. 4,200 employees and 15 Cargill facilities company-wide, so that's more than protein. We have salt businesses, animal feed businesses, trading businesses in the Kansas City, the Olathe area. And so by the numbers, we have $170 million in salaries that are paid in to Kansans, so residents of Kansas. $646 million that we have made investment in statewide. We've donated $1.1 million back in contributions, and that's an annual basis, an ongoing basis that we're supporting our local communities, investing in the Kansas Food Bank. We certainly know how important that is, as students still need to get their backpacks of food for being at home when school's not in session, and then paid $10 million in taxes. And we bring that up because we know that's part of the base of what drives, the economy and what drives the system. And so we're proud to be a part of the Kansas footprint. So when we talk about turkey specifically, when we're a fully integrated business, we have 700 plus growers that are independent, but they contract to us, and only 2 Cargill. When we talk about these independent growers, they're growing without growth promoting antibiotics, without hormones, steroids, and Brian talked about it. I mean, we very much in the poultry industry are very much focused on being stewards of the land, being stewards of the product we produce. The different kinds of products we produce for consumers: fresh and frozen, whole birds. A little bit of trivia: 1 out of every 3 turkeys that is served during Thanksgiving come from Cargill. And we're very proud of being a part of that family exchange that happens at Thanksgiving. But we have many other formats of products, and you'll see these across the turkey industry. And then you'll see slicing, such as deli meat. In the deli case, some that are pre-sliced and some that are bulk and sliced behind the deli. Dicing, portioned, shredded, and breaded products. And you can see that we have multiple locations for both our live production as well as our processing plants. And again, we don't have turkey live production in Kansas. Most of our production would be in Arkansas, in Missouri, and then in Virginia. Just as a point of trivia for back to your Butterball, if you're ever driving from Wichita to Table Rock, you'll probably drive by a few of Butterball's live operations, and you'll see signs for their growers in Southeast Kansas. So there's a lot of important components to how we all work together as well, because we have feed mills that we help supply other facilities with, not just our own Cargill facilities. And just like talking about Simmons, we supply products to them for their feed and often rely on them for products that come back into our system as well. And so different companies do different things, but ultimately we're trying to deliver that safe, wholesome, affordable product to the consumer. So what are some of the consumer trends around turkey? Consumers have made some pretty radical changes actually in how they shop and where they shop for their families during COVID-19. And turkey has actually benefited. Total fresh turkey was up 26% in volume versus the same period in 2019. So typically in the summertime, a lot of deli and ground turkey is consumed, but when there was shortages of other proteins, there was quite a bit of turkey that was available, both fresh and frozen by the industry. And the turkey industry was able to help keep retailers in stock with protein, and certainly the industry has benefited from that. The super centers have gained 2 share points in turkey during COVID, so they've actually seen a lift in that, and there's reasons why. Branded fresh turkey, you can see our brands: Honeysuckle White, Shady Brook Farms, and Honest Turkey. The branded fresh turkey outperformed private label and unbranded turkey in the retail case set. But the consumer that's shopping for turkey, they're health conscious, millennial female, average age 25 to 50, usually a primary household shopper, and driving value through health and sustainability, and very interested in taking care of their family. Now, as an industry, we believe there's a real opportunity to grow turkey use in new seasons and new times through barbecue. So I serve on the National Turkey Federation board and part of the executive committee. And we see that growing turkey availability, so putting a whole turkey on a smoker, taking that bone-in breast and smoking it, or a whole breast lobe, smoking turkey thigh is a lot like pork butt, and shredding that product is a great performing product. And so you'll see us as an industry promoting turkey to be something that is a different shopper. People buying pork butts and briskets and racks of ribs, typically more middle-aged males, and so targeting a different shopper and a different part of the store. But again, that's part of the opportunity that the turkey industry has, is to broaden the usage of the product and not just be coined as for Thanksgiving or for deli meat. And I think Cable mentioned it earlier, but ground turkey is an area that is very popular as well, particularly during the post-January when people have resolution season. So there's a lot of increased dining at home, more meal preparation, less fine dining, and these products fit well into that area, both for the whole bird market as well as for the retail area. So how do we connect through this process? And this is my last slide. And what we have found is that, business must go on. And while we're virtual and we're not getting together face-to-face in our plants or with customers or giving tours because of COVID, we have found a lot of new ways to connect. And so this is our chef who is actually in his backyard putting together videos about how to prepare products, and in this case, barbecue. But we've done Zoom meetings, virtual cuttings, where we have the customer on one end and us on the other, and being able to do things in real time. We've done drive-up sensory panels where we put kits together. We have employees come by, pick them up, go back home, prepare them, and give us feedback. Online recipe demos, ongoing exchanges and consumer surveys. And we've just changed how we've operated with transportation and logistics. And so you can see just a completely different take on a turkey pot pie, but you can see that their job is to really look for new ways to bring the consumer new ideas. Most consumers only have about 10 to 15 recipes, and now that they're home more, they're bored with their recipes. So looking for new ideas, new things to cook, new ways to cook, just to break up the monotony is something that we and several in the industry have been focused on. So with that, appreciate the opportunity to share how we're tied to the poultry industry and right out of Wichita, Kansas. Thanks, Gary.
Great, thank you, John. And it's important to note that we do have the actual live bird when you hear from Dr. Robbins from the Butterball Network. But it's also important to know that we have those employed in the ag workforce supporting the turkey industry through Cargill and decisions that are made on the business unit side out of Wichita. So thank you, Dr. Robbins, and to John for bringing us a little more information about the turkey industry. We've spent the first half of our time together really looking at not only the layers, but also the broiler industry and the turkey industry. And I think it's very evident to know that agriculture and the supply chain to get that end protein into a consumer market is very much linked with farmers, ranchers, and agribusinesses across our state. I would be remiss because I did note 100,000 dozen eggs, and then actually from Cal-Maine should be 300,000 dozen eggs that are shipped out from the Lyon County facility on an annual or on a weekly basis. So I'm going to have you go back and do your math and multiply times 3 on the number of eggs that is. We're going to spend the second half of our time looking at benefits to our farmers, ranchers, and communities of having and embracing a poultry industry. And then we'll allow time towards the second part of this for question and answers, because I see there are good questions that are starting to roll into the queue. So it is my just my pleasure to introduce Josh Rowe with Kansas Corn to lead the sector session that will really focus on benefits to Kansas farmers. So Josh is no stranger to us here at the Department of Agriculture, having formerly worked with us as an assistant secretary. And now he works with Kansas Corn on behalf of market development and leads policy initiatives on behalf of Kansas corn producers across the state. So welcome back, Josh. Josh was busy last week on the corn sector. So for those of you who are able to join us, you're going to get to hear Josh's comments on why the poultry industry is important to those farmers across the state that grow a corn crop annually. So Josh, thank you for coming back today.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks for having me on and for the introduction, Carrie, and thanks for everyone's time so far. As Carrie said, and Josh Rowe, and have the pleasure to work for Kansas Corn, and just happy to speak about the poultry industry. And so first question you might be asking is, after I'm going to talk, one of my friends and colleagues, Dennis Hoopy with Kansas Soybeans, is going to speak as well. And you'll be wondering, why are these corn and bean guys here? And I'm here to tell you, I'm going to speak more narrowly about just the potential impacts to the corn and soybean sectors, just from what a single plant could look like and how that can benefit all farmers. You know, there's going to be other things there. There's obviously other multiple benefits that could occur with the expansion in the poultry industry in Kansas, be that for an individual family farmer that would choose to become a contract grower, to just other incomes and jobs created throughout our economies in the state, but going to focus on the commodity side. And Dennis is really the first point here. It's it might be in Kansas, this isn't necessarily the case, but nationwide, it's worth noting poultry is our top customer in the U.S. if I'm speaking from a commodity standpoint. And Dennis and his portion of the presentation will really break down some numbers I think you'll find being very enlightening. A second bullet is, you know, producers across the state doing a really good job of raising corn and beans, and our in-state processing hasn't picked up. And it's just, you know, we've got some great value-added industries in the state, but most of the corn and beans that we raise in the state of Kansas leaves the state borders before it gets further processing. And it's great that we can provide that crop to some of our other neighbors, but the more value we can add to our Kansas grown commodities and keep circulating that dollar, so we're exporting a higher value product out of the state, the better that's going to be for the economy. And like I said, I'm going to end this with just one little couple slides on just what an average size processing facility, what that could do to that. What you're going to see here, these are maps put out by the KSU Ag Economics Department here. And what this is a soybean basis map. Really quick Econ 101 lesson. What basis is it simply the difference between the price that a farmer receives for their crop, in this case soybeans, less the price that is on the Chicago, or this is the Chicago Board of Trade. So what you see is the more negative a number is, that is the further below a price received by an agricultural producer in the state. And what you'll see is, for a vast majority, if not all of the state, it's kind of tough to discern some of these numbers here, but you'll see a good chunk of southeast Kansas in that there's a negative 0.54. That's that. So that means that an average soybean farmer in southeast Kansas is receiving 54 cents less per bushel for their soybeans than what the price is on the Chicago Board of Trade. Then you see that gets more drastic as we get further west. One thing being, you go from, there's this red line you see basically from Marshall County down to Comanche County. That's basically what I'd like to call a $1 line, where the price received by producers is actually over $1 less than what's on the Board of Trade. And any localized demand or increased processing that we can get has a potential impact. Corn has a few more complexities to it, but you see by and large basis being averaging very close to zero, if not negative in many areas. You see kind of that dark bluer line across the bottom of the state. I mean, in southwest Kansas, that implies higher demand for corn from our feed yards. You get into south central Kansas, that's not real strong corn country to begin with there, so a little higher basis levels. And then southeast Kansas, believe it or not, even though we don't have the poultry down there, the vast majority of that corn leaves the state to feed poultry that are grown in, surrounding in Missouri and Oklahoma, and then of course Arkansas. And I've had the chance to go to several feed mills in these neighboring states, and you just stand there and you just count the number of trucks that are tagged from Kansas in these places. And so that's also keeping that high. But you see, as you move north out of that, you get into some strong negative basis there. And so you see our potential expansion in poultry could really have two benefits. Not only could that benefit our farmers to possibly receive higher prices, it would also have a great benefit towards a poultry company that would want to locate there, because that is one of the larger costs of poultry. An integrated poultry operation is the cost to feed. So there's lots of there's just lots of things working together that could make Kansas a great place for the poultry industry to thrive. What does that look like? So what do chickens eat? And so I'm talking in really broad average numbers I got from the National Chicken Council. You just look at a typical ration fed in the U.S. now for broilers. Roughly 65% of the ingredients in that would be corn or corn byproducts, and about a quarter is soy meal. And our average chicken, this is just phenomenal for a broiler here. A broiler can take 1.7 pounds of feed and turn that into a pound of live animal weight, which is just an amazing efficiency level. So all that being said, if we look at a kind of typical or an average processing facility that would process 1.25 million birds of 6.5 pound weight every week. You saw from the Simmons presentation that kind of was right in the middle. They have birds from the 4.5 to the 8.5 pound range in there. And look there at the end, assuming those percentages before, just this one facility would consume 8.33 million bushels of corn and 3.78 million bushels of soybeans. So have really good far-reaching impacts that could potentially impact many producers outside those that could potentially join an integrator there. So that's why we see this as a great potential for increasing the demand for our commodities, especially in these times with kind of excess supplies out there. And we'll continue to help advocate for the poultry industry and make sure it's done in the most efficient and sustainable way possible. So I'm always happy to talk some more at this, but I think at this time I'm going to stop my sharing here, and we'll either Carrie wants to introduce my friend Dennis Hoopy, or I can as well, whatever you're comfortable with. Carrie?
Yeah, so thank you, Josh, for sharing that information. We do like to support our neighbors and surrounding areas, but we also really like to capture that full economic impact of the value chain by being able to utilize our commodities in state before we ship them out to a potential end customer. So thank you for highlighting the corn industry and really taking time to take the number of million of bushels of corn and equating it to the broiler industry. So it's my pleasure to also continue on the benefits to Kansas farmers and introduce Dennis Hoopy with the Kansas Soybean Commission. Dennis is the Director of Field Services for Kansas Soybean, and he is going to pick up on comments that Josh has made to lay the foundation for grains going into feed and talk specifically about soybean and meal use in the poultry industry. So Dennis, thank you for making time for us today.
Well, thank you, Carrie. We'll see when I'm done, whether I really want to thank you for the invitation to be on the panel. Josh did an excellent job of building up to what I'm going to talk about. And I think to start with, I need to mention that in the upper right-hand corner of the slides that Sean has just pulled up on the screen here, you'll see the United States Egg and Poultry Export Council. They're the only organization that works with the poultry and egg industry to develop new markets and maintain markets around the world. They have staff that are distributed all over the world and work daily to develop those new markets, get away from the problems of exporting U.S. poultry into certain countries. And from there, then they help put this presentation together for me because they have the expertise in-house. So I just wanted to give them credit for that. And again, I'm going to be, as I talk today, I'm going to be using poultry, even though I will be talking about both poultry and egg exports. Josh talked about the abundance of soy and corn that we grow in this country. And both in the state of Kansas this year, we both ranked number 8 in total production as a state versus Iowa, Illinois, and some of the others. But in that production, you will see and learn that we in the soybean industry constantly talk about how 6 out of every 10 rows or 6 out of every 10 bushels has to be exported. And I'm talking soybeans themselves. Whereas on the corn side of things, roughly 1/3 of those bushels have to be exported for us to even have any close semblance to the price that we are currently enjoying. Next slide, please. And here on this slide, you'll see that poultry on the soy end of things is the largest consumer of meal. And of course, meal comes from being this, when the soybean is crushed, the soybean is roughly 80% protein or feed and 10% or 20%, I'm sorry, oil. Well, the meal is what is so important to the animal livestock industry in this country. And out of that number of soybeans that we use in the country, 98% of that is crushed for the animal agricultural feed industry. That 98% then translates into poultry being the largest consumer at 55% of the total crush, and 33% of corn goes into the poultry feed. Next slide, please. Aha. I did not get that slide, so I wondered what they want to do with that one. Okay, let's go on to the next one, please. Ah, here we go. I didn't realize that. I apologize to the group. But anyway, what the world would look like without poultry and egg production is that prices would drop 9% for soybeans and 6% for, excuse me, we're going to start over here in just a second. Ah, here we go. Okay, they did not come out in the order I had planned. Anyway, U.S. soybean prices would overall drop 65%, and corn prices would drop 42%. So if you, Sean, if you can just go on to the next slide, because it's going to show that. There we go. Thank you. Anyway, next slide. But what that means currently is that with the amount of feed that poultry industry uses on a yearly basis, is that to the Kansas farmer, we are roughly adding 32 cents a bushel. And to the corn farmer of Kansas, we are adding another 52 cents, which again, if we push the button, it will show that. Thank you. And with that, without that, we would see prices fall by 9%, and corn prices would fall an additional 6%. Next slide, please. But if you look at the entire demand for soy and corn, for poultry and egg, you will see that the industry uses over 296 million bushels of corn, and roughly 17.3 of that is contributed from Kansas, which adds up to $62.3 million back into the pockets of the Kansas farmer. And again, on the soy side, it's not quite as many bushels, 7.6 million bushels, but for $66 million back into the pocket. So we have roughly $130 million coming back in to the pockets of the Kansas farmer, corn and soybean farmer. Next slide, please. But out of that, we will see that the corn and soybean industry used about 2.2 billion bushels in total. And so they also used 1.1 billion bushels of soybeans, which you can see on the graph here how the demand is continually climbing since 2000 and will continue to climb because poultry exports around the world are at a record high, and every year we seem to set a new record high. Again, a lot of our raw product goes down into Mexico. But again, if we can value add that product by using poultry to eat up the product and value add it, we will all be better off in the future. Next slide, please. I take it I'm done with the slides. Anyway, I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk. I apologize for the slides not being in the order when I finally got them to Sean. It's not his fault, it's my fault. But again, exports of the poultry around the world, poultry and eggs, contributes greatly to the profitability of the Kansas soy and corn farmer. And thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Dennis. And I just want to say thank you for your patience with the technology. We have a lot to get all of our panelists on and to get the right slides. So we think you did a fabulous job, Dennis. But one thing I want to note for all of you listening and watching, you know, those trend lines and those graphs consistently show growth. I think one went out through 2023. We know our farmers and ranchers in Kansas are very good at growing corn and growing soybeans. So we can watch those trend lines and become hopeful and really look forward to the future of the USAPEAC export market for our poultry and eggs, which go back to the eggs that are laid in cow Maine with Brian Ballard all the way through turkeys and broiler industry, even though we don't have that industry in our state yet, right? So looking at a corn and soybean obviously benefits to our farmers. We're gonna transition now and kind of look at the, not goes what in, but maybe what comes out of the poultry industry by looking at poultry litter and how that product is a benefit to our farmers and ranchers. Today, Dr. Peter Tomlinson with K-State Agronomy joins us to talk about poultry litter and how it is an input for our farmers and helps them reduce costs associated with fertilizers and other options for treating their field. So thank you to Dr. Tomlinson for joining us today. I'm going to share the screen to him so he can talk a little bit about poultry litter use in Kansas. Peter.
All right, well, thank you, Carrie. You know, this is certainly a topic that I have quite a bit of interest in. During my time as a graduate student at the University of Arkansas, worked on gaining a better understanding of poultry litter as a fertilizer product and how it you know, impacts the soil. And so coming to Kansas, didn't necessarily expect to be working on this topic, but in, you know, beginning in 2011 and 12, we started to see you know, quite a bit of tonnage of poultry litter moving into Kansas, and so became involved in working on poultry litter management issues again. And our producers our crop producers in Kansas view poultry litter as certainly a valuable source of nutrients. If we remember particularly nitrogen and phosphorus prices in 2011, 12, 13, they were increasing. And so our producers began looking for other options to bring, you know, those vital nutrients into their cropping system. And poultry litter was one of those manure products. And certainly our Kansas producers have a very good knowledge of utilizing manure products as part of their soil fertility portfolio. You know, the big question even today remains, you know, how much poultry litter is coming into the state of Kansas. And we don't have a good handle on it. You know, looking at, you know, some information from the University of Arkansas, and this, you know, goes back to 2011, but at that time, you know, they had documented that about 105,000 tons was being exported from the Illinois River watershed, which is there in northwest Arkansas. As that poultry litter comes into Kansas, it does not come in as a fertility product, but rather, simply comes in as manure. And so, the real challenge in Kansas was, how do we address water quality concerns? How do we balance the desire of our producers to utilize the manure product and at the same time protect our state water and our state resources? And so, in Southeast Kansas, working with our K-State Research and Extension watershed specialists and Kansas Department of Agriculture, Kansas Department of Health and Environment, we developed a education and voluntary best management plan approach. We cost shared with producers on improved poultry litter storage sites. I was involved in educational programming to give and enhance the information that our Kansas producers had so they could be better managers and better utilizers of poultry litter. And I would say we were successful in that. As time went on, we saw a decrease in complaints about water quality. We started to find poultry litter being properly stored, even at sites that we hadn't cost shared on. And so progress was made just to provide a better understanding of poultry litter. And I'm primarily talking broiler litter here. There's certainly some parallels to litter coming out of turkey production facilities. Our litter coming or manure coming out of an egg laying facility is going to have a bit of a different composition. So just set that here. And what we see is from a nutrient standpoint, we've got, a bit of a range, and that's going to depend on the ration that's being fed. We've got some numbers out of an extension publication that's available here through K-State. One of our county agents, now retired out of Southeast Kansas, kept track for a number of years of poultry litter samples that came into his office. University of Georgia numbers, Clemson University values from their extension folks. But generally, we're congregating around 60 pounds of nitrogen per ton of litter, somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 pounds of P2O5 and 45 or so pounds of potassium K2O. And so what we see there is, that's that has, a good nutrient content and certainly has a value as a fertilizer. But when we think about what our crop production needs are, it is an unbalanced fertilizer when we think about what our corn and soybean crops need. And so if we apply that poultry litter on a nitrogen-based application rate, we're quickly going to exceed the crop phosphorus requirements. And because we're applying more phosphorus than is needed in the system, we're going to accelerate the buildup of our soil phosphorus levels. In a short-term basis, that can be managed, but if we want to keep those soils functioning and be able to apply poultry litter over a longer-term time frame, we really need to make sure, and Kansas has the opportunity to set the approach that, okay, we haven't had poultry here, we can manage from the beginning on a phosphorus-based application rate that meets the crop or the crop rotation phosphorus requirements, but really presents an opportunity to minimize the impact on our state water quality while still utilizing that poultry litter as a source of fertility. And managed right, we don't need to think about, simply how do we dispose of this manure, but how do we view this as a value-added product? And that's really been the basis of the producers that are utilizing poultry litter in the state today, is that it's a valuable part of their fertility program. A few more agronomic considerations. Soil testing is key when you're using manures. We need to understand what our soil test levels are. We need to manage those levels based on how the crop how the cropping system is performing over time. And so if we look at our K-State recommendations, soils that are less than 20 parts per million on either Malic 3 or Bray, certainly we have an opportunity to manage either in build or a sufficiency approach. And if we were to bring those soil test P levels up to a 20 to 30 part per million threshold, we'd really be thinking about maintaining or what's the crop removal at that point. And what we're trying to avoid is exceeding 50 parts per million. That's the point where we no longer see an economic return from the addition of phosphorus, and we really move into that environmental risk range on our phosphorus management scale. So when we think about poultry litter, and here at the end of the presentation, I'll show a few slides, but generally on an annual basis, we're talking about an application rate around 2 tons per acre. And you'll see that that'll meet many of our cropping system phosphorus requirements. And then we also need to be cognizant, make sure that we're observing all recommended setbacks from water, waterways, water bodies, and this is a challenge. Certainly like to see our soils covered and minimize the amount of tillage operations, and this is really an area across all agricultural sectors, figuring out how we can get our manures incorporated while at the same time minimizing soil disturbance. But to capture the value of the nitrogen in the poultry litter, we really need to try and get that incorporated into the soil within about 24 hours. Putting some dollars and cents to this, as we look back at fertilizer prices and where they've ranged in the last 10 to 15 years, poultry litter just simply on nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium has a value somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 to, as high as $85 per ton. Certainly when we think about the organic material that's being added to our agricultural systems, the micronutrients that are being added, I think that value of having poultry litter in an operations fertility plan is probably over $100 per ton. And so, certainly present some value to our row crop producers. Thinking a bit broader, and Josh alluded and Dennis have alluded to, the value to Kansas agriculture if poultry litter production were to occur in the state from the commodity side. I think we have some real opportunities to utilize the nutrients from, in this case, broiler production. We're already utilizing the nutrients from the producers around the Calmaine egg facility. And so, worked through a few years ago some theoretical models of, how much poultry litter, would be produced if we saw an operation come into the state. And so, big picture, 400 houses. And part of this depends on the integrator and how they're going to manage and work with their growers to manage the litter in those houses. If we're seeing, if it's an operation that has 4 inches of litter, ballpark somewhere around 50,000 acres are going to be needed annually to apply that litter. If that litter thickness was up to 6 inches, we'd go up to about 75,000 acres that would be needed annually to apply that litter. And, so stepping back just a minute to talk about, and this would be litter coming out of broiler production. typically we're going to see on an annual cycle 4 to 5 flocks of birds growing on that litter. You know, traditionally that litter has, you know, there's been a full house clean out annually, and that's how these numbers were derived. But, you know, integrators are certainly looking at other options as environmental regulations have tightened around the country. And they're finding success with maybe it's a full clean out every 2 years. So, you know, these numbers, you know, tend on the high side, but, you know, certainly, you know, when we look at our crop acres in the state, you know, we've got a lot of acres annually. These were from the 2019 quick overview statistics for the state. But certainly, you know, when we're looking at, you know, 6.9 million acres of wheat, 6 million acres of corn, you know, 4.5 million acres of soybeans, and certainly we know some of those soybean and wheat acres probably are overlapping. 2.6 million acres of sorghum, and, you know, 75,000 acres needed for poultry litter from, you know, 400 houses, works out to 0.3, I think it's 0.36%. Somebody can double check my math on that. But you know, certainly we've got a lot of other manure resources in the state that are being applied to those acres, but I think poultry litter can fit into Kansas crop production. You know, just taking this from a different approach, you know, let's say we have a 100-acre farm somewhere in central Kansas. You know, we've got some soils that certainly have low soil test P. You know, the scenario that I worked out here with Dorvar Rose Diaz, our state fertility, soil fertility extension specialist, was, you know, 5 parts per million. We've got a corn yield goal of 160 and soybean at 60 bushels per acre. Made some assumptions on the nutrient availability based on our current K-State recommendations. And as we work through that, you know, what we see here is we're going to need works out to meet the phosphorus requirements, 232 tons of litter. And then from that, so that's to meet the phosphorus requirements of the crop. And then we're going to realize out of that about 18,600 pounds of nitrogen, or the corn crop in this year is going to require 18,600 pounds of nitrogen for those 100 acres. And so when we subtract the nitrogen of 6,658 pounds that we're gaining from that litter, we would need to supplement with about 119.4 pounds of N per acre to meet the corn nitrogen requirements on the year. So, you know, certainly utilizing manures does require the input of commercial fertilizer as well to balance out the nutrient portfolio. And then in our soybean year, you know, based on the fact that we said 50% was available in the first year, we're going to see the balance of that available in the second year. And, you know, we're just shy of what the P requirements are going to be for the soybean year, and we're going to realize some residual N as that manure continues to break down over the year, and so you get a nice boost of starter nitrogen in your soybean year as well. And so just looking at some crop harvest P removal rates, you know, that corn soybean example that we just went through, you know, works out to about 2 tons of poultry litter needed for that crop rotation, and that's assuming that litter is applied before corn planting. If we were in a wheat, soybean, double crop soybean corn rotation, backing off the yield potential on the soybeans, we're 1.9. So again, you're starting to see a theme here. The numbers work out to about 2 tons per acre, just over 2 tons to the acre on a corn rotation. Looking at corn silage, this is an annual number, so 1.3 would be about 2.6 if we thought about that in the terms of a 2-year rotation that we were looking at on the previous slide. Fescue hay, 1.8, Bermuda grass, 1.4. And so again, we think about that on a 2-year basis, we're centering in around 2 tons to the acre. So, as I wrap up here and we think about, where does poultry litter fit in some Kansas crop rotations? Certainly there are potentials to get that litter out and applied to, pre-plant to wheat, corn, and sorghum. Need to do some research on this, but we do feel that there is an opportunity to use poultry litter to top dress wheat. Certainly some research would need to be done in that area. But if you think about it, we've got a established growing crop at that point that has a nitrogen demand. If we can get out across that wheat in the spring and have that growing crop utilizing the nitrogen and the phosphorus, we think there may be some real opportunities there. And another window is post-wheat harvest. Again, dry time of the year potentially, gives us a broader window of opportunity to get out on our fields and get that litter spread. And it all, I think about our manure management and in terms of the concept of the 4 R's of nutrient stewardship. So, how do we marry the fertility source and apply it at the right rate, the right time, and the right place, and then collectively, meeting our goals of durability, profitability, productivity, and maintaining a healthy environment. So, with that, I thank Carrie and the Kansas Department of Agriculture for the opportunity to visit with all of you today.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Tomlinson, for bringing those comments to us about the use of litter as an application within our row crops and our grains that are grown in Kansas. I also want to just plug K-State Research and Extension because Peter and his colleagues there on campus work through the Extension unit to help work with our farmers who do have an interest in applying, just to make sure that they are applying them with practices and safety and the environmental concerns and environmental considerations that happen when we're applying any type of application into our grain. So thank you, Dr. Tomlinson, for those words. We're going to move into our final panelist of the day and then transition into questions because I hear we have 3 to 4 questions in the queue for our panelists to answer. But I do want to introduce you to another very valued and important person within the Kansas poultry industry. That's Dr. Scott Beyer. He's our poultry extension specialist at Kansas State University. Dr. Beyer is just going to share a little bit of input about poultry opportunities here at the university, and then also speak about the game bird industry, which is another part of our poultry subsector that we haven't talked about today. So Dr. Beyer, thank you for making time this afternoon to join us.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. I just want to give a little summary about us at Kansas State University and what we offer. I've been a poultry specialist here for 28 years at the state. I've now been a Kansan longer than anything else I've done in my life, so that's great. I originally came out of Texas, where my love of poultry started when I kept driving by all these commercial houses and seeing these beautiful farms built. And I thought, I kind of want to do that one day. So my degree at the time was from Texas A&M in biochemistry. And I shifted over and started working in the poultry industry at the University of Georgia. So that's sort of my background. When you're the only poultry guy in the state, you're kind of involved a little bit in everything. You're spread kind of thin. So I do teaching, research, extension, and service. The bad thing about Zoom is you have to be up close when you read. So I got to put on my professor's glasses here. I teach everything from intro poultry. I kind of make it a fun class. I think a lot of students, they've never thought about this industry because they've never seen it in Kansas when they drive down the road. I grew up with it in my backyard, so I knew everything about it. I teach a poultry judging class. I teach a products class, a management class. And then, as was mentioned, I started teaching about 3 years ago our new game bird management class. That's a big industry for us in Kansas currently, and it probably shouldn't be overlooked for sure. We have one of the largest undergraduate programs in animal science in the country, and we have a lot of students who end up picking different careers than they thought when they came here, and certainly poultry is one of them. A lot of them have an interest in the Midwest industry, of course. A lot of them want to stay in the area, so we have a great resource. If you're looking for interns and things like that, and students and employees, we've got them. Our research program here focuses on what we do best, and that's one of the things we do here is feed manufacturing. I'm a poultry nutritionist myself. Out at our research farm, we have a fully functioning farm. We do layered turkey, broiler, and game bird research. We have a brand new game bird facility that we're proud of right now and doing a little outdoor pen research type things. And since the big outbreak, we had to go online, but our farm kept functioning. In fact, my office has been out at the farm here probably since last middle of semester, and probably will be this next semester out at the research farm. A couple of projects we've completed recently are adding enzymes to feed, working on trying to get that phosphorus more available to the bird, so it affects both the environment and saves money on production. Right now, we have a turkey nutrition project with feed manufacturing going on in our research facilities. We also submitted funding for COVID-type projects where we're looking at workstations with the food safety group, try to figure out what we can do there to make it a little more safe to work in those areas. On the extension side, you'll probably see me all around the state doing anything from state fair, 4-H, FFA, helping ag teachers. I go out and give lectures to small groups around town to educate them about the poultry industry itself. So you'll probably see me there. On the poultry service, we have a poultry judging team and we're full service. We got everything here. We have an avian science club. We focus on travel. This past year, we've been to the IPPE in Atlanta. We got canceled, but we were heading up to Minneapolis to go to the Midwestern conference there when all the virus hit. But we do participate in the Midwest Poultry Consortium, and this year it's going to be held at Iowa, where all the states in our area participate in going and working in the summer there. I do a ton of undergraduate research projects, and I really make that an emphasis of what I do here at K-State, because undergraduate research is something that got me started on my career, and I really enjoyed it. One of the things that I'd like to be involved in with the communities as they consider poultry is providing seminars, so we can look at some of the issues that the community is going to be concerned about with this industry. We can give examples. We can bring in experts in the area like Dr. Tomlinson. We can point out the additional customers that are essential to corn and soybean, and let me not forget sorghum. Sorghum is a big part of the poultry industry as well. It can certainly be part of the feeding program for sure. I think litter is a tremendous asset that has been overlooked. It is a nutrient, of course, but the big story for Kansas is that if the poultry industry came here, it would fit in agronomically. And what I mean by that, it's what we do. It's the largest animal industry in the United States, and we have virtually none here in Kansas. So it's important to the balance of our agricultural program. We would be able to have the biggest recycling program on phosphorus that we could ever imagine. Rather than bringing in phosphorus from out of state, we would be able to recycle that on our crops and things. It brings in a diversity of jobs. Sometimes I wish I wasn't the poultry guy because I think I could convince Kansas that this is a great thing for them. People think that, well, I'm the poultry guy, I should be pro-poultry, but this is a thing that we can't miss. So I'm going to pass it on back. Sure. Thanks for inviting me here today. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, yeah. So thank you, Dr. Beyer. I have to tell everyone listening today, Dr. Beyer has been a very good partner here at the Department of Agriculture. We lean on him for poultry expertise, everything from egg grading to helping us understand the industry. So thank you, Dr. Beyer. We are at a point of starting to close our session for this afternoon, and we've received several questions from participants. So I'm going to share the screen with Robin and have her provide those questions. And then we have panelists who will answer those before we conclude with announcements this afternoon. So Robin.
Yes, thank you, Carrie. So I do have a couple of questions that have come in, but just a reminder to folks, if you still have a question that you've not asked yet, feel free to pop that in the Q&A real quick. The first question I want to ask, probably geared toward Brian or Sarah, but also anyone if you'd like to answer, is how can young people gain experience in the poultry industry, or how can they get involved?
Yeah, I'll go first. This is Brian with Cal-Maine. We offer internships with our company. I think this summer we have somewhere around 30 interns that are participating and learning about our industry. We also support FFA and 4-H and do a lot of public speaking in high schools just to give some exposure to poultry in our state.
I can jump in there. I think the biggest advice that I have for young people as they're thinking about a career, whether it be poultry or something else in agriculture, is network, network, network. You're going to have that opportunity across your career through college of having a chance to meet people that will come into your life and will talk about their career. And when they say it's okay to give them a call or drop them an email, ask a question, take those opportunities to engage and ask those questions, because they're offering it because they genuinely want to help that next generation. I know there's lots of folks that have helped me, and I think Cable even mentioned it, that have helped us along the way, and it's our chance to kind of pay it forward. Dr. Beyer mentioned the Midwest Poultry Consortium. I was actually part of the first class that went through that, and that was pivotal really for me getting into agriculture. I was planning on doing, equine or something else. I knew I wanted to go more of the corporate world. I wanted to get back to my agricultural roots. Being a kid from Kansas, poultry was totally foreign to me, and so it was something very, very bizarre for me to go and learn about this. I remember having the conversation with my dad going, I'm going to give this a shot, but I don't know exactly what this is all about. And it was through those experiences and the folks that I met in that program, the professionals that would come in and have those conversations, they connected me to my next internship, and they connected me to folks that have turned into lifelong mentors. So find those opportunities. Midwest Poultry Consortium is a great way. It's a 2-year summer program. Dr. Beyer also mentioned IPPE. So IPPE, the Midwest Poultry Meeting, there's several other meetings that offer student programs, and take those opportunities. I don't know what it will look like this next year, but probably a lot of virtual opportunities, which will actually maybe make it more accessible to many people. And then go in and do your research. So get on the NCC website, the National Turkey Federation website, US Egg and Poultry, United Egg Producers, and start understanding and learning about who are their member companies, and then go do your research and make those connections. Utilize social media, utilize LinkedIn, and really dive deep, because this is, as much as an animal business, it's really a people business.
Absolutely, great. Thank you. Thank you both. The next question that has come in, a question from Heather. She asked, and I'll probably ask this of Cable or John, what are the barriers to having a turkey processing facility in Kansas?
Well, I think maybe to start with, let's talk about it from the consumer back. The turkey industry is facing fairly flat consumer demand. I talked about the recent growth because of COVID, but that, in the grand scheme of a 10-year trek on turkey demand, turkey is about 16 pounds per person on a per capita basis on an annual basis. And most of that is at Thanksgiving and deli and ground turkey. Part of why we've talked about needing to grow the span of which consumers use the product. And so probably the only way that would happen is if a large processor or regional processor was looking to replace existing assets. And it's not impossible, but certainly a challenge, because you want to look at not only your grain, which was talked about earlier by Josh, you want to look at your employment. Most of these plants have to be in an area today where there is a larger labor pool. And if you think about from a labor standpoint, it's an important balance between being near a larger population for applicant flow versus in a rural area. And historically, most plants built in the 60s to the 80s were built in, rural areas. Our beef plant in Dodge City, Kansas, but then recruiting people to that area can be a challenge at times. And so I think it's a coordination of the Department of Ag, the industry, communities, and companies coming together. It's not impossible, but certainly can be a challenge. I think for turkey, further processing and the value added side is probably the greatest opportunity in terms of where things might come from and, for the state. But Cable may have some other takes on that as well.
Nothing much further there to add. Certainly agree with all of John's assessments there. And, there's a lot of turkey processing capacity that's a little underutilized across the United States at the current moment. So I certainly think that'll be filled up before anyone looks at expansion. Certainly the broiler industry is one that has a little easier of an expansion plan in terms of operating a whole new complex by adding on, a feed mill, a hatchery, all of the farms and the processing plant all together kind of as a one-stop shop for that full vertical integration in one place. Whereas the turkey industry, although vertically integrated, doesn't quite operate quite to that level in terms of growth and expansion. They tend to stick a little closer to home with some of their current assets that they've already got in place in order to do any of that expansion a little bit more organically versus looking further to the outside.
I think we have, Robin, I think we have time for one more question, if there's one more question out there.
There is. I do have one more question. I may see if Josh would be interested, or whoever would like to answer this question. What is needed of a Kansas community to be able to recruit poultry growth, either with layers, broilers, or the turkey sectors in general?
I guess I could take first stab at that, but from here, this might open up a bigger can of worms that we can all get offline and discuss for a lot more. But I think the first thing is just to have all the proper people in a community, be that the ag groups, the local business groups, and just the community organizations, all behind this project, a project like that, and just be willing to bring it in. You're never going to bring in, no matter what a project is, there's always going to be some opposition. But if you have those community champions all on board, that especially encompasses the major industries, I feel that is vital to go forward. That's my opinion.
Very good. Anyone else want to add a little to that final question of the afternoon? Very good. Well, of course, we need community support, but we also need natural resources. We need transportation systems. We heard a little bit about agriculture workforce. While agriculture workforce is very important to this sector, but also our farmers who perhaps would have grower houses or partnerships with those companies who have an interest in Kansas. So a lot of complex opportunities, but the discussion starts and people start dreaming and envisioning what can be. And hopefully today, each and every one of you on this call have learned a little bit more about the benefits of the poultry industry and 3 subsectors of the industry with our layers, our broilers, and turkeys. So I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us today. I really feel like we did have an all-star panel from the business side, but also from the side of support to our farmers across the state. I also want to thank each and every one of you joining us on the participant side to learn a little bit about the poultry industry. Know here at the Department of Agriculture, we're just a call away if you would like to network further with any of our panelists or further clarification on any information that was shared today. In closing, I do have just a couple of reminders that I've been asked to share. Our next series of sessions are crossover topic on the 17th, 18th, and 19th of August. And those registration sessions are open. On August 20th will be our actual Ag Summit, where we'll come together. We'll hear from a keynote speaker, and we'll also hear about findings of our Summit sector virtual sessions. Also, this past week, the Kansas Department of Agriculture launched our Kansas Agriculture Heroes program. So this is the first of its kind, but we know during the COVID-19 situation, we had a variety of folks and businesses within the Kansas agriculture sector working as essential workers daily to make sure our supply chain was open, viable, and operating for Kansans who were needing some sort of agriculture project or product. So we want to recognize those by issuing a call for our Ag Heroes program. Nominations are available via an online link that you see there on your screen. And nominations for Ag Heroes is open through August 10th. We'll pull those and then we'll make some selections and recognize businesses and individuals in the agriculture community during our actual Ag Summit on the 20th of August. In closing, again, I want to thank you for making time this afternoon to learn a little bit about the poultry sector. Tomorrow we have our 13th and 14th sector sessions with ag technology and entrepreneurship, and then also tomorrow evening with our specialty livestock industry. So from all of us here at the Department of Agriculture, thank you again for your participation, and we hope we are able to see many of you tomorrow on the next Summit sector session. So thank you and have a good afternoon.